Hi, so I've just come to talk to you today about nutrition. I'm Kay, one of the dietitians in the hospital. So really, if I start off by going through a little bit about the Eatwell guide and the main sort of 5 food groups, and then how we might adapt that depending on how you're getting on with your recovery after your treatment. So the Eatwell guide is divided into 5 main food groups. Firstly, you've got your fruit and vegetable section. That should form quite a large part of your diet, and what we want from that group is that there isn't one fruit or vegetable that you should aim for over another. What you want to try and go for is a range of different colours of your fruit and veg. So for example, your carrots have got your beta carotene, which is converted into vitamin A. Your citrus fruits have got your vitamin C. Your green leafy vegetables are good sources of iron. So opting for those different colours of your fruit and vegetables means that you'll get different vitamins and minerals from those. So that's the main aim from that group. And it gives us a lot of fibre, which was really good for our bowels and helping us to sort of feel fuller for longer. So it's a really good section to include lots of, and we should ideally be aiming for our 5 portions of fruit and vegetables a day. If you're a person that really likes your fruit juice or fruit smoothies, just bear in mind that there's a lot of natural sugar from the fruits in those. So really you're trying to limit that to 1 small serving a day. If you arrange 5 different sort of fruit or veg into your smoothie, then that will only still count as 1 of your 5 a day. So the main aim is to try and go more for those whole foods, so you're getting more of the fibre benefit. The second main food group that should form up a large part of our diet is the carbohydrate section, and that section will provide our bodies with lots of energy. So in that section you're looking at sort of things like your bread, your rice, pasta, breakfast cereals, and what you're trying to go for that group generally is the higher fibre sort of choices within that. So a higher fibre breakfast cereal choice, such as your porridge is a really good one, or opting for wholemeal pasta, brown rice, or trying to incorporate the skins from your jacket potatoes. There might be certain reasons why you might be advised to follow a low-fat, low-fibre diet, but really you should be aiming for the higher fibre sort of choices within that group. So again, that's really good for our bowels, and it also means that we're releasing our energy more slowly through the day than if we're having more sort of refined things like your white bread or mashed potato, where you might get a sort of more of a spike with your blood sugar level. If you're having sort of more slower release energy foods, then you're less likely to sort of suffer with fatigue and things sort of after eating, because you've got that slower release of energy. One of the other sort of food groups in there is your protein section. So that's really good for sort of healing and maintaining muscle. So as part of your recovery, you're probably likely to be doing some more activity to try and rebuild your strength. So protein is your friend with that. It's really good for sort of healing as well. So really it's an important food group to include at each of your meals. So breakfast, lunch and tea if you can. And that can come in the form of your meat, fish, eggs, or as a vegetarian sort of alternative, your beans and pulses are a really good source of protein as well. So a wide variety, and if you're opting for the beans and pulses within that group, you're also getting the benefit of the added fibre from those. Another really good source of our protein is our dairy food group within this section. So things like your yogurts, your milk, your cheese, they're all really good sources of protein as well as your mineral calcium and vitamin D. That's really important from this group. So it's really good for our bone and teeth health within this section. So another really good one to incorporate. And depending on what your sort of dietary aims are and your weight and things as part of your recovery, depends on the choices you'll be going for from this section. So if you're still sort of recovering and trying to gain a little bit of weight, then actually going for some of the higher calorie sort of choices within that. So opting more for your whole milk, your thick and creamy or Greek yogurts, things like sort of custard, rice pudding, so some puddings and things to get some extra calories and protein in would be really good. Whereas if you're a little bit more sort of conscious on maintaining or watching your weight, then actually opting for some of the lower fat choices like your skimmed or semi-skimmed milk might be the more preferable choices within that group. So you can adapt it depending on what your needs are at the time. The final sort of main food group enclosed on that plate picture is your fats and oils section. So that's the small sort of purpley slither. And it's a really important group to include. That group contains lots of fat-soluble vitamins. So your vitamins A, D, E and K are all your fat-soluble vitamins, and they're really important to include in our diets. But from that section, because it is such a high source of energy and calories, that's why we're sort of limiting those amounts. And depending on what kind of oils and spreads and things you choose is completely personal choice. If you're looking more sort of heart health wise, then maybe your sort of sunflower, olive oil, rapeseed oil sort of choices might be the better perspective, because they're your poly and monounsaturated fats that are slightly better for our heart health. But equally, sort of butter has its part because it's slightly less sort of processed than some of the other sort of spreads and things. So it's just sort of weighing up what your most important needs are for you really within that section. So with that plate, the portions that are shown on that plate are not necessarily what we'll be aiming for at every meal time, but what we're aiming to do is to get those proportions in over the period of a week really. So with the carbohydrate and the fruit and vegetable sections forming the largest part, and then you want some source of protein at each meal from the dairy and protein sections, and then your sort of smaller fats and oils sort of section. Just a note on the dairy section that if you are vegan, just make sure that you're opting for calcium enriched milk alternative sort of choices, such as your oat milk and soya milk. Just make sure they're calcium enriched, so you're still getting that benefit of that mineral within that section. You'll notice off the side of the plate there's also fluid, and that is really, really important. The plate suggests sort of 6 to 8 glasses of fluid a day, but obviously that depends on the size of the glasses you're having. You're looking at somewhere between 1.5 litres to 2.5 litres of fluid a day on average, but that might be increased if you've got excess sort of fluid losses, or if it's a really hot day. So just to bear that in mind. And really you're opting for fluids that are going to hydrate you the best. So sort of caffeinated drinks and alcohol are not so good at hydrating us as our other sort of fluids. So you're trying to sort of opt more for sort of flavoured waters, water with a bit of cucumber in, lemon, to sort of hydrate, or maybe sort of considering some of the decaffeinated sort of drink choices. With regards to snacks and things, you'll also notice that there are cakes, biscuits, sweets off the side of the plate. That's not included within the plate, because although it's something that we might have, we should really be aiming for those in small quantities, because we don't actually need those within our diet really. They don't really contain any valuable sort of vitamins, minerals or nutrients that our bodies need to survive. So that's why it's not included within the plate as a whole. With regards to sort of your meat choices and things, what you're sort of looking for is that you're looking for those less processed sort of meat choices. So rather than opting for sort of bacon, sausages, burgers, you're trying to sort of eat the whole meat, so that you know that it's not got added sort of salt and other sort of additives to it. We want to try and limit those more sort of processed food choices long term as a sort of secondary prevention sort of method. And really our red meats we want to sort of limit to once or twice a week, because it's slightly higher in fat, but it is still a valuable source of iron, so it is definitely something to bear in mind. But smaller amounts in terms of opting more for your fish, your chicken and your other sort of white meats, and your eggs and things as your protein choices, sort of generally to get the less sort of processed options in there. Really as well, depending on what your appetite's like sort of now, you might want to sort of make things easier for you to prepare. So if you're struggling a little bit more with fatigue still as part of your recovery, then look at sort of cooking methods to make life a little bit easier for yourself. Things like your frozen fruit and vegetables or tinned, as long as you're going for the tinned in sort of spring water without added salt, they're still good choices. And actually some of your frozen sort of fruit and vegetables might actually contain more vitamins and minerals than some sort of older, fresh sort of choices that have been hanging around a little while and might have lost some of their water-soluble vitamins. So don't feel that they're a secondary choice, and actually opt in for some of the sort of pre-chopped things like your onions, peppers, mushrooms, to make your life a bit easier if you are struggling with energy levels. Are definitely not a bad choice to go for, as are your ready prepared sort of frozen vegetables and things. So just to bear that in mind. In terms of sort of fatigue as well, you might also want to sort of look at how you're cooking the food to minimise impact. So maybe sort of using more of the slow cooker, or if your appetite's not great, sort of cooking more using the microwave where you've got slightly less smell with your food, or maybe sort of cooking in bulk, freezing portions, and then you can just reheat those on some days. So you're not necessarily sort of having to cook every day. If you're out and about a bit more that day and might be a little bit more fatigued, then you can reach for a good home cooked frozen option from the freezer. So that's a good alternative there as well. Actually staying away from the smell of food if you're still sort of struggling a bit with your appetite can help. So as I say, mentioning the microwave, but if you've got an extractor fan, maybe making sure you use that. Having the window open, or if friends and family are still sort of helping with the cooking and things, then that's another really good option to consider there. In terms of sort of secondary prevention, really it's the same as the general sort of population. So really it's sort of trying to opt for more of your sort of controlling your weight. So you're making sure your weight is correct for your height. If you are looking at losing some weight, that what you want is slow, steady weight loss, so it's not at the detriment of you losing muscle mass. And as part of that, keeping active will help with you to maintain your muscle mass. You're looking at maintaining a nice, healthy, balanced diet. So as we've touched with that Eatwell guide, that will all help. Limiting your intake of alcohol. So we should all be sort of limiting our alcohol intake to about 14 units of alcohol or less per week, with 1 unit being a small glass of wine or a small pub measure of spirits, or half a pint of a normal sort of strength beer or cider as being 1 unit. And what you want is to spread those out through the week and make sure you have a couple of days where you don't have any alcohol. So that's just to bear that in mind. And then obviously opting for less of those processed foods. So the more foods you can cook yourself from scratch so that you know what's gone into them, the better, and sort of limiting more of those ready prepared sort of meals, and maybe more of the things like your cakes and biscuits and things that are sort of shop prepared, making a little bit more from scratch. So there are a few leaflets and things that will be linked at the end of this video, which you might find helpful sort of sources to support some of the information I've given today. And there's some really good information out there. If you are looking online, what I would say is try and stick within the main sort of well-known places, because there's so much information out there. The World Cancer Research Foundation has some really good resources on their website that you can request. They've got some really good recipe ideas, so I would definitely point you in the direction of them. Macmillan have a really good healthy eating booklet, and they've also got one that's called the Build Up Diet if you are struggling a little bit more with maintaining your weight as part of your recovery, then that might be one to refer to. And then the final one that hopefully there's a link to on this video as well is that there's one on sort of dietary myths and facts around cancer that might just sort of help reassure you in the long term if you are sort of worried sort of health wise. It's a really good sort of resource just to dip into. There aren't really any foods that you should completely avoid. It's just all about balance like we've discussed. Thanks very much for listening.